And remember, on both sides of the cristagalli were all of those little tiny cribriform foramina, right? Okay. And the olfactory nerves, which that yellow tape is pointing to, they go up through all of those little cribriform foramina, and those are just the cranial nerve 1, the first order sensory neurons, that are going to synapse in these olfactory bulbs on each side of the cristagalli. Okay? So the rounded part is where the somas of the second order sensory neurons are. A ganglion is just a collection of somas in your peripheral nervous system, right? And these aren't quite in your brain yet. And so remember that your cranial nerves are considered peripheral nerves, right? So these olfactory bulbs are really just a ganglion, a collection of somas or cell bodies. But these second order axons, they're going to go deep into the brain. And they're either going to go to the thalamus, they don't have to, but they're either going to go to the thalamus, or they're going to go to your temporal lobe, or the underside of your frontal lobe, which sits right here. Okay? Right? So if I'm in the nasal cavity, okay? So odors come in and excite these cranial nerve 1s. They're going to go up through this cribriform plate of your ethmoid bone, and they're going to synapse right here in this olfactory bulb. You see it lying just underneath your frontal lobe? Okay? So this is the olfactory bulb. Okay, now watch my stick. That's the olfactory tract. Okay? You can only see a little bit of it, but it's going to this area of the frontal lobe where you can have conscious identification of smell. Okay? All right? And what can I ask you the function of the sclera? Just use logic. It just helps the eyeball maintain its shape, right? It's really tough stuff. So it protects your eyeball and it helps it maintain its shape. I mean, that's all you have to say. So I don't want you to get paranoid about these functions. Just you know them. If you didn't learn them for the third lecture exam, then yeah, you need to learn them so that you know them for your final. But if you learned all these things for the third lecture exam, then you're going to be fine, because you already know what their functions are. Okay, so what is the innervation of this muscle? Oculomotor, that inserts on the sclera of the eye, and it's going to, when it contracts, it's going to pull your eyeball up. If I ask you the function of this, is eyeball movement, right? Of superior oblique, which is inserting on the medial aspect of the eye. And so then I know if I lift this up, okay, that on this side, I can see some fibers that are going in a different direction than lateral rectus. So this is my inferior oblique, inferior oblique and inferior rectus are also both innervated by cranial nerve 3, but this lateral rectus is innervated by abducens cranial nerve 6. The nerve is innervated by the superior oblique is innervated by the trochlear nerve, which is cranial nerve 4, by cranial nerve 3, ocular motor. Okay. All right. So I could still ask you all of those innervations of those skeletal muscles that insert on your eye. Okay. I could also ask you, oh, interesting, they took away some of the sclera, and this is a layer that has a bunch of blood vessels in it. So this is my choroid coat. So now I know on this model that the choroid coat is going to be blue. Okay, so like I said, all these eye models are a little bit different. Okay, about the colors of the eye, the colored part of the eye, and so this is the iris. And what's the function of the iris? No. It changes the size of the pupil, or regulates the size of the pupil. Absolutely. Tell me a nerve. I could put the tape on here and say, tell me a nerve that innervates these inner muscles of the iris. Ocular motor. That stuff builds up. Okay, so what's that?
24 minutes.
That's the palpebral conjunctiva, because these are supposed to be little eyelashes of your inferior palpebra, right? So this is your inferior eyelid, your inferior palpebra, and this is your superior palpebra, all three tunics in a row. So this is the sclera of my fibrous tunic, and this is the choroid coat of my vascular tunic or uvea, and this is the retina of my nervous tunic, right? And you don't have to know the names of the tunics for lab, but you do have to know which structures go with which tunics for your lecture exam on Monday or Tuesday. Okay? All right? The yellow pin is right at a point where you see a bunch of blood vessels going in and out, and if you look on the back, you can also see the optic nerve exiting. So that point where the yellow pin is the optic disc, okay, the blind spot of the eye. Okay, if I put it in this, this little circle right here that is slightly darker orange and said area,
Macula.
then you would say macula lutea.
Lutea.
But if I put it right smack in the middle of that, where there have been so many pinpoints already, then and said specific point, then I want you to say fovea centralis, and that's where you have your most specific vision, where you only have cones. Okay, all right, and that's about all I could ask you from. As I go forward, so this is the back side of the iris. Do you see how that's about? And look at what the iris looks like on cross section, right? Just reminding you. So this is the iris. So I know that this is towards the front of the eye. So do you see this part where the retina is tacked down? What do I call that edge? The ora serrata. And that's the function of the ora serrata, to tack down the retina. And that's it, okay? What's the function of the retina? Those are the ciliary processes, and their function is to make aqueous humor. And I almost always ask that on a lab exam. The ciliary processes function is to make aqueous humor. Okay, so it's a common thing that I ask. Okay, and that's about all that I'd ask there. I could ask you, looking at this from the side, you see where someone has put a little bit of pink tape? Okay, so what's that? The ciliary muscle, right? And that ciliary muscle is a continuation of this choroid coat. It's part of your vascular tunic, as is your iris. Do you see how my ciliary muscle is continuous with the iris? Okay, all right, so all of the things that are blue on here are the uvea, that vascular tunic. They belong to that vascular tunic, okay? All right, so that's that eye model, okay? So now you go pick out a different eye model that you would like me to go through. Contract, then it causes these suspensory ligaments, see these little tiny white lines attached to the lens? It causes them to relax, and then my lens is going to bulge like a tennis ball. It's not going to be flat like this, it's going to bulge like a tennis ball. And then that's going to refract light to a greater degree, and that's how I'm going to be able to see things that are close up. And that process is called what? That process of the lens bulging so that I can see close up. It's called accommodation. So yesterday and the day before in your quiz, when I asked you the function of the accommodate, close-up vision. Say for function of the lens is accommodation. Okay, that's what I want you. Those are the ciliary processes, and like clouds rain, the ciliary processes make a liquid called aqueous humor. And that aqueous humor goes from the ciliary process into this space between the lens and the backside of the iris. This space is the posterior chamber, and then that aqueous humor goes through this hole. The hole is the pupil and enters this space, which is the anterior chamber. And in that way, it can nourish the backside of the cornea, which is several cell layers thick. And it diffuses through all of those cell layers, keeping that cornea healthy. Okay, all right? So over here, this, I could put it here. I don't usually, but I could put the tape here and say, what is this? And to figure out what that is, you'd have to go over to the opposite side. So what is this? Ciliary muscle. And all they're trying to show you on this half of this model is they're just trying to show you how vascular these different areas are, right? So all these blood vessels, they're trying to show you that this is part of your vascular tunic. This is your choroid coat, okay, right? But if I follow that choroid coat forward, it turns into my ciliary muscle. And that also turns into my iris, and all three of those things are part of my vascular tunic, or the uvea. The reason why I'm hammering that is because there's a question about that on your lecture exam. So you have to know what structures belong to the vascular tunic, or the uvea, okay? All right? Okay. So what if I put the tape right here? What would you tell me that is? That's a cornea, and what's the function of the cornea? It refracts light. That's it. Okay, that's all you have to say. It refracts light. So then, looking at other things, okay, so what layer is this? The retina, and what's the function of the retina? Vision, okay, and where is the yellow tape pointing? The optic disc, because I can see the optic nerve right behind it, okay? But what if I took this yellow tape and I put it here and I said area? Macula lutea, but if I put a pin right at the center and said specific point, you would tell me fovea centralis. Okay, all right. On this particular model, this layer is the sclera, and this blacker layer that contains melanin is the choroid coat. Okay, and then the next layer in, which is kind of a lighter yellowish brown, is the pigmented layer of the retina. And then this layer right here is just the retina, okay, all right? So usually if I ask pigmented layer of the retina, I usually ask it right here, okay? So that is something that's on your list. So light comes in through all of these different layers of cells to hit these rods and these cones. Lower serrata, and what is its function? Tack down the retina, okay? What's the function of the choroid coat? It nourishes the retina, right? Or